Now, that said, if the DSi XL doesn't get high resolution, or the next iteration of the DS doesn't get high resolution, then we've got a problem. Because these games are starting to, with today's day and age, look kind of decidedly low-tech compared to games for like the PSP and the iPhone and all, and especially what's coming out on the iPad, which Nintendo doesn't really consider a competing market, but they really kind of are. So, they need to up the resolution so that they stay relevant in the market, and so that we get better-looking games. Because we want better-looking games. So if Nintendo can couple their good gameplay with better-looking games, then we've got a package deal that we really want to buy. So, like I said before, the build quality of this console is excellent. You can just have a look there. If you saw my thing before, it's shiny on the top, smooth on the back. It's rock solid, much more than the DS Lite. The DS Lite feels more like a toy in comparison, and this feels like an actual device. It's got some good heft to it because of all the screens, and because of the bigger screens, and the controls. Everything just feels solid. The only thing is, the screen still wobbles. And it's got a pretty big wobble because the weight of the screen is big, but the DS Lite did that too. And it's always annoyed me. I've seen some DSi units that don't do that. I've seen some DS Lite units that don't do that, but on the whole, it seems to be a potluck whether or not your screen wobbles. Mine does. This one does, and pretty badly. So that's the only noticeable build quality defect that I can see that would ever deter me. Otherwise, this thing's really rock solid, and the matte bottom feels great in your hand. The glossy top. After a while, it starts to get annoying with all the scratches and fingerprints that can get on it, but for the most part, it's pretty. So I like the design choice. I think it's at least a little bit of a step up from the matte that they did with the DSi, but the matte's not that bad either, so whatever your preference is, it's pretty good. Let's really just wind this up right here, right now. So why does a console like this even exist? So why would Nintendo take what essentially is a great console that has a whole massive library of games and then just make a bigger one? Like, without any real feature updates, without any software updates, without any updates except the bigger screen. So why would they just take this and blow it up? Really, the answer is I don't know. Probably just because they can. And so we have to think that they're a company that's making oodles and oodles and oodles of money, and they want to spend that money and try something out. So they figure, well, if a company like Apple can just go and magically take their iPhone and make it bigger and turn it into an iPad and sell a gazillion of them, then why can't Nintendo just take their DS and turn it into a bigger one, and turn it into the DSi XL and sell a billion of them? And they can, and they are, so that's why. They wanted to do a social experiment to see what would people buy and what would people like, and they did it, and it's successful. That's the only reason I can imagine why the DSi XL exists, because there's no benefit. There really is no benefit to get the DSi XL unless you want bigger screens. And in the world of touch, that usually turns out to be a good thing. Just to run down everything one more time. It's really low resolution. You're talking Game Boy-like pixel density here. You can see the dots, and in some cases that even results in odd discoloration. The screen even looks darker than it should because you can see the lines between the pixels. However, as a result, the screen is bigger and more touchable and more shareable, and it's a much more fun and immersive gaming experience. And you might want that if you're a Nintendo fan, because you've always probably been a fan of gameplay over graphics. But it needs high resolution eventually, because if they make the screen any bigger, it's just going to be ridiculous. It's going to be hard to look at. You're not going to want to play on it. So, tread lightly. So, really, it comes down to, do you want this console? Well, do you want big screens? Buy this console if you do. If you do not, and you want your nice, crisp, sharp picture, the smaller your screens get, the sharper your picture. So you're going to want to be looking for the smallest DS you can. So the picture on the DS Lite is incredibly crisp. It's not nearly as crisp as something like the iPhone, because it's still really, really low pixel density. However, it's ridiculously crisp in comparison to the DSi XL. The DSi XL looks more like a Game Boy, the original Game Boy. Game Boy Color or something. In that you can see all the lines between the pixels and all that yada yada. So if you're okay with that, and you really just want big screens, this is a no-brainer purchase. It's huge, it's fun, and I like it a lot. I can't really see much not to like if you like the DSi. Now, a lot of people are probably going to complain about the non-inclusion of a Game Boy Advance slot, but if you really, really feel the aching need to play Game Boy Advance games several years after their death, then you are free to just stick with your DS Lite and not even consider anything, or have both, or get a Game Boy Advance SP for $10 somewhere. Really, I know that there's a difference between the screen quality of the SP and the DS, or the DS Lite, but really at this point, Game Boy Advance games shouldn't even be a consideration. I thought they were at one point, and I have a whole library of Game Boy Advance games, and I never play them anymore. In fact, I'm almost subsistent on emulators alone if I really need a fix. But that's for another time entirely. So, in conclusion, you should get it if you want big screens, because that's all this is. And it's really big, and it's really pretty, and the touchscreen is great quality, and the build quality is vastly, vastly improved from the DS Lite. So if you're still rocking a DS Lite, you might want to consider making a switch, at least to a DSi, unless you still play Game Boy Advance games, or unless you're playing Guitar Hero on tour. All two of you.